With that, I'm going to jump into a presentation. It's about, 30 odd minutes. So we're going to go through this framework. But before we do that, I want you to drop into the chat. We're going to talk about, 10K work is a framework for radical focus, or radical prioritization. So I want you to think about that, right? Because we are living in a world of constant react mode, right? Notifications, Twitter DMs, WhatsApp messages. In fact, just before this presentation, I had to mute my notifications, log out of iMessage, close Superhuman, close Slack, close Twitter, right? So that just gives you a sense we're constantly in react mode. We're content grazing, we're information grazing. And so I'm going to show you that there's a better way to do that. And obviously we still need to do a lot of those reactive tasks, which we call $10 work. But there's also a sweet, sweet nectar as you move up the food chain to some tasks that really give you a lot of leverage, that give you the ability to build a 7-person business while surfing, 180 hours in the year. It is all possible with the right prioritization approach. So drop into the chat. Think about your tasks. Just do a download of your tasks, a mental download, and ask yourself, what is the lowest value task that I do? All right. And then I want to think about it on the other extreme. What is the highest value task that I do? And I just want you to drop in, right? Do like lowest value, highest value. So we can all kind of see and inspire one another. And then we're going to go through the presentation. So lowest value, $10 task, highest value, 10K task. And then there's a lot in between. All right. So with that, Julia, I'm going to share my screen. Does that work? Awesome.
Yes, we can see it.
You can see it. Everything good? All right.
Yep.
Welcome to the presentation. If you're watching on replay, it's so good to see you. If you watched it live and then watched it on replay because it was so delicious, you're the best. My name is Khe Hy, and I'm going to walk you through the magic of the 10K work framework, a framework for radical focus and radical prioritization and lots of surfing, if that's your thing. Let us start with a story. I will start with a story about a mighty, mighty lion. All right. Now, it's 11 o'clock here. So the lion is hungry and grazing roaming the savannah, looking for its food options. First up, there is a svelte antelope, a svelte, meat-packed, nutrient-rich antelope that would be a delicious, delicious source of lunch. And then looking around a little closer, there's a little field mouse, right? That could also be like a little snack, right? That could placate said lion's belly. All right, so let's look at the tail of the tape. The lion has two options. The first is the field mouse. Now, the field mouse is 30 calories, easy to get, yet requires, very little effort required. However, the lion is a mighty animal and the field mouse is quite paltry, that it actually would take the lion more calories to hunt the field mouse than the lion would be able to consume. Now, if we look at our gazelle, 250,000 calories. Now that gazelle is spry. That gazelle is fast. It can dodge. It's got some, Gary Payton moves in the savannah and very elusive. But the lion knows that ultimately, if he sinks his heart into it, he will be able to hunt down the gazelle and then feed not only the lion himself, but the entire pride. So when faced with a decision, there's two outcomes here. The path to oblivion and the ability to not only survive, but to thrive. Now you're probably asking yourself, I came here to talk about second brains and 10K works, not antelopes, field mice, and lions in the savannah. What the heck is this guy talking about? So here's the rub. You, my friend, you, yes, you, Mr. Sheeran, are the lion. And every single day you sit down at your computer, at your desk, at your laptop, and with your direct reports, you are faced with the same dilemma. Will I get to inbox zero, clear out my Slack messages, organize Kindle highlights, and manage my social media? Or will I set my goals and vision, learn how to say no, plant seeds for the future, and cultivate my most important relationships? We are all the lions. Will we react all day to field mice, or will we invest in hunting down the antelope? So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Khe Hy. As Julia mentioned, I'm the creator of the blog and email newsletter called Rad Reads, and we also teach the course Supercharge Your Productivity. We have a very, very simple mission. Our mission is threefold. We want high-performing professionals. We help them lead more productive, examined, and joyful lives. We do not think that those three things should be handled in isolation. What's the point of being productive if you don't know why you're being productive? What's the point of being productive if it's not making you joyful? We believe that there is an intersection of those three pieces, and we as a service and a product offer that in two ways. We have a cohort-based course that actually has been heavily influenced by my friendship with Tiago called Supercharge Your Productivity. The next cohort will actually start right when Building a Second Brain ends, so it will be the natural extension. And we run a consulting business that brings these lessons to companies. How can a company be more productive, examined, and joyful using the Rad Studio? Along the lines, I'm an avid surfer. I'm not particularly good, but I'm avid at it. I make lots and lots of dad jokes. I could say bad dad jokes. See what I did there? And I used to work on Wall Street. I was burnt out and I had a change of career and wanted to really pursue work that was more passionate and let me live the life that I wanted to live for myself and my family. Now, Julia's going to drop in the link. We have a free template for you all. So the 10K task management template merged with Para. So you can implement all of this, put all your notes, your tasks in the Para system in Notion with a free template. So we are excited to share that with you. Okay. So we're going to start with a few things that you cannot unsee. Ready? Vans is the square root of ands. The Chicago Bulls logo upside down is a robot reading a book, right? And you can classify all of your tasks using 10K, 1K, 100, and 10. Whether you like this framework or not, whether you run and implement it or you find it confusing, you will not be able to see that all of your tasks can fit in one of those four categories. And that is what we're going to talk about today. But first, things are starting to pick up. I don't know what the new normal is. I don't know exactly where we are in the COVID cycle, but one thing's for damn sure, people are flying again and business travel is happening again. Now, remember business travel, right? You got that watery coffee, the scrunched keyboard position that's so non-ergonomic, very weak Wi-Fi that's strong enough to give you your email, but not strong enough to let you stream Netflix. So you sit down on a business trip and you open your laptop and you get ready to work. How many productive hours do you think you have, right? The answer might surprise you. How many productive hours do you think you have in a day? The answer tends to be 3. So if you have 3 productive hours, I presume many of you work more than 3 hours a day, you better stuff your most impactful needle moving work into those 3 hours. And that is why we created this framework. What will you work on in those 3 hours and in the remaining hours in your workday? So here is the matrix. It's a simple 2x2 matrix with a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. The vertical axis, let's say the horizontal axis representing skill, so low skill, high skill. And the vertical axis representing leverage. How can you scale yourself? How can you scale your impact? How can work happen without you even doing it while you're surfing, while you're out with friends, while you're out with your kids? That the more leverage you have in a task, the more impact that it has. And when you can combine unique skill with leverage, you become unstoppable. So I like to think of this as a dichotomy. On one side, you have efficiency versus effectiveness, right? Squeezing the water out of a stone with a text expander, or you're actually moving the needle on the right thing, right? It's very different than, using superhuman for email. Execution versus growth, right? Are you working on your business or in your business, right? Are you working in your career? Or are you working on your career? Hungover work, the ultimate test for $10 work is if you can do it with a raging headache, or deep work, where you actually move the strategic ideas forward. Releases dopamine, hard to define. Short game, long game, right? 10K work is the long game of your career and of your business. And obviously one of my favorite, it's the difference between struggle and thrashing and treading water and ease. Can you find joy? Can you find flow? Can you find your zone of genius? Can you find your ikigai, right? As you move up the quadrants, that's what happens. Now, we got to make sure that we put your second brain in the right place, right? If you're just collecting ideas into a notebook and the notebook is wasting away, your second brain is the $10 category. But as you move that second brain up the quadrant into the 10K quadrant, you're igniting your creativity. You're growing your business. You're recruiting the best people. Again, you're finding your flow. You're in your zone of genius and you're in your ikigai, right? But you got to move your second brain across the quadrants. Now, leverage has played a very, very important role in my professional life. And I just wanted to give you 3 little stories, right? The first is I was promoted to managing director at BlackRock at age 31, one of the youngest in the firm. It was because I had always incorporated, I didn't know it at the time, but it was the 10K work that I was doing. Then I became a solo creator and managed to surf 2 hours every day while building a growing, thriving business that's approaching 7 figures. That was, again, because of 10K work. And now this is the best part though. At our company, we have 8 employees. We have 30-hour work weeks, unlimited vacation, and I probably get 11 Slack messages a day from my team. 11. And 0 emails. We're an email-free company. That is what, if you get this right, this is what is possible. If you make those investments, if you understand leverage, these are all possibles. And I can't wait to see how you go out and take this and implement it on your own. All right. So what is this 10K? We already talked about the different quadrants, right? Actually, let me go back to have the quadrants for you. Low skill, low leverage, $10 work. Low skill, high leverage, right? It's kind of like you're leveraging the wrong thing. $100 work. Better than doing $10 work, surfing Reddit. $1,000 work, high skill, low leverage. It's what you're paid to do. And then the magical quadrant of 10K work, right? High leverage, high skill. So we're going to go through all of those. Now, the first thing I want to point out is we have a global audience. We have people across all different parts of their career. This is not about earning $10,000 an hour. This is about force multipliers as you move through the quadrants, right? So I got a scan of the chat where it said, when we asked, what's your $10 work? A lot of people said checking email, right? That's right. By the way, you have to do that. You just probably shouldn't do it with your most productive hours of the day. $10 work checking email. What's 10 times more impactful? Writing an SOP, right? SOPs are awesome, right? Standard operating procedures, basically creating processes to scale your company. But if all your company did was write SOPs, Houston, we've got a problem, right? So what's 100 times more impactful than checking your email? A 10K skill. Being a good writer, being a good engineer, being a lawyer, being an investor, being a software designer, being a UX designer, right? That's the skill that you get paid to do. And because you're good at it, you get a premium, right? You get a market premium. And what's 1,000 times more impactful than checking email, right? So I want you to drop in, right? I want your minds to start thinking on this topic. What is 1,000 times more impactful than checking an email? Because every single one of you has that task, has more than one of those tasks. If you just graduated from college, maybe it's finding a mentor. If you're the CEO, if you're Tiago, maybe it's setting a 5-year vision, 10-year vision, 20-year vision. And then there's everything in between. All right, so let's talk about leverage. Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. Do not confuse efficiency and leverage. Just because you use a text expander and you save yourself, like text expanders will show how much time you save each year. I use one religiously, and I think I save like 6 hours a year. Great. 6 more hours of surfing. But that is not leverage. And we'll see that falls in the $100 category. Squeezing water out of a stone is not leverage. However, leverage is working on your business. Leverage is working on your team. Leverage is working on your strategy. Leverage is working on your career, right? And so I want you to think right now. We're going to have you write, it's kind of a fun little exercise. What is your leverage statement? Like, what is something that happens when you are doing something, or when you're doing something that you enjoy, right? This hit me earlier today. We had a lecture while I was surfing. We had a session in our community, in our paid community. That's leverage right there. The fact that there is a session, that there's a team running the session, that there's clients being serviced, students being serviced. And so leverage is when something happens when you are doing something that you enjoy, right? And so obviously this is our board meeting. Leverage is when I go surfing and our students keep learning, right? There's a lot of work that goes into that so that that's possible. And it involves identifying leverage. When I asked Anne-Laure Lecomte, you might know her. I said, what is leverage to you, Anne-Laure? She said, leverage is when I had a late night with friends and our products keep selling. She's in the SaaS community, a recurring revenue business, right? So she needs to set up the systems, the brand, the identity, the team, so that her community can sell while she's out hanging with her friends, right? It doesn't mean that's all that she does, but it shows the multiplicative power of what she's able to do. So I want you to drop in, right? This might be the first time you're thinking about it this way. But what's your leverage statement, right? It's a deeply aspirational one, but it's one that we will move you towards. So remember, leverage is when something that's important to you, and then some activity that happens that you are a part of, but you're not directly involved in because of the leverage. So drop your leverage statements into the chat. All right, now we're going to go through all 4 quadrants. There'll be a quiz at the end. No, I'm just kidding. We'll go through all 4 quadrants. So let's go with $10 work. Remember, low skill, low leverage, short term, can be done with a headache. Lots of dopamine release. Inbox zero. Are you an inbox zero person? I am an inbox zero person, by the way, but I only check my email 2 or 3 times a day, and I never reply to emails before 5 p.m. Organizing. Do you label folders? Do you organize books? Do you put things into complex Notion databases? The data here says that if you, on average, it takes people 67 hours a year to put emails into folders and labels. Here's the rub. It's actually harder to find them once you do that, right? But it feels good when you're doing it. There's a project you don't want to do. You're like, yeah, let me just clean up my email inbox. The 3 S's: scroll, swoosh, swipes, right? Don't need to talk about those. And since I'm a former finance person, we all know formatting, right? Especially Excel formatting, column widths, row stripes, decimal places, print area, hidden rows. Again, $10 work. Now remember, everyone needs to do $10 work. It's just how you prioritize it that matters, right? If you are a morning person and your best burst of energy is when you take that first sip of coffee and sit at your desk, please, I beg you, don't get to inbox zero then, please. Also, Notion emojis, color-coded calendars, knowledge management, all of it done in isolation is $10 work. Now, I want you to look at this slide and drop into the chat. Why do we do it? Nir Eyal, who wrote Indistractable and Hooked, he says, attention management is pain management. One of our mantras for our course is come for the productivity, stay for the existential, right? We help people lead more productive, examined, and joyful lives. Sure, you can hack your way away, by using the Freedom app or deleting social from your phone. But if you still have the craving to do it, you need to examine the craving. So you already all identified your $10 works. Why do you do it? Drop into the chat. Is it poorly defined? The task, the project? Do you have imposter syndrome? Are you afraid of failing? Trouble starting, right? These are some 10K questions right there. I want you to sit with those. I want to sit with your procrastination and see if it's tied to any of these or the last one. Maybe you're just tired. When I get into $10 work, rabbit holes, I'm just exhausted. The best thing I should do is go to sleep. All right, that's $10 work. Now we get into the danger zone. $100 work. It's leveraged dopamine. So yeah, responding to YouTube comments or Twitter, Twitter threads, $10 work. But what if you got a Twitter scheduling app that let you automatically post things? That's $100 work, right? It feels so productive. This is the land of productivity, everything. GTD, Notion, PKM, my course, Tiago's course, everyone in isolation without the why am I doing this? What's the end goals? Productivity then just becomes the means. I'm going to say productivity becomes the end. Productivity is not the end. Productivity is the means to the end, which implies you must find what the end is. Is that 10K work? What is the end? Right? What makes me come alive? What is my zone of genius? Where do I find flow? How do I discover ikigai? Right? So be careful with $100 work. A classic tool with $100 work. Let's say you're, debating using Superhuman. For those of you who don't know Superhuman, it's an incredible email app. It's ridiculously expensive. You have to learn an entire new keyboard shortcut language for it to really work for you. Like Command Shift comma is how you delete a draft. Yeah, let that sit with you. $30 a month so that I could learn that Command Shift, comma, deletes a draft. Yeah, you really got to think about that. But some people go down that path. I love the app, by the way. I made the investment. But that's not going to make my business better. That's not going to make me feel less rushed. It's not going to make me be a better manager. It's not going to make me more creative. There's still a purpose for this. It probably will save me 15 minutes a day so that I can go become more creative, but it's not going to deliver that creativity, right? So be careful with $100 work. $100 work is where we find our familiar friend. Shiny new toy syndrome. Now, drop into the chat if you are, if you've had a dalliance or a flirtation with shiny new toys. Maybe it's a productivity app, cycling through calendars because you feel too busy. Or maybe it's exercise gear, the one of the hundreds of thousands of people who bought Pelotons during COVID, only to see the secondary market for a used Peloton just blow up. Self-improvement books, fancy notebooks, and yes, I said it, online courses as well. So drop into the chat. What's your shiny new toy? For me, it's definitely fancy notebooks and productivity apps. And you can see here that these tools really start to sneak up on you, right? You can spend your entire life, learning Alfred or GTD. And I love GTD. I've used GTD for almost 20 years. And it's helped me, but it has not shaped the career and the life that I want. It's been a useful tool in that, but it's not the end. So always remember that. And $100 work sneaks up on you because a lot of people just stop here. No, don't do that. So how do you avoid shiny new toy syndrome? Let me present you what we call the 10K flywheel. It goes hand in hand with the 10K framework. Self-awareness with tools and behavior change, right? You need this trifecta or else you're just chasing tools, right? So what's the self-awareness? Let's say you're contemplating a new CRM, a personal CRM. You need to ask yourself, what is my highest leverage work when it comes to my relationships? Or said differently, what does a CRM truly bring to my life and business? Then you need to ask yourself, what relationships matter? Am I a concentrated relation type where I invest, heavily in 5 relationships? Or am I a diffuse relationship person where I have, strong, weak ties, I have a lot of weak ties. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. And always, 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 do you know where you're going? Right? Or is this just a distraction? Remember, attention management is pain management. Excuse me. Then there's a behavior change. Can I commit to no work? Can I commit to doing work that does not release dopamine? Writing is a great example of that. Writing for yourself, strategy, planning, no dopamine, no sharing on social, right? Can I commit to learning new skills? How can I leverage technology? Technology isn't the answer, but it's the pathway towards the destination. Once you've looked at those questions, then it's time to look at the tools. Which takes us to $1,000 work. $1,000 work, let's be crystal clear. It's a damn good life. $1,000 work is you're good at something. You're great on something. Maybe you went to college. Maybe you got a PhD in that thing. Maybe you've done that thing for a decade. Maybe you're naturally gifted in that thing. You're a lawyer. You're an investor. You're a software engineer. You're an artist. You're a designer. That is your $1,000 work. And it is awesome because it's the result of a dedicated and a commitment to learning. Amazing. And we could stop there. In fact, most people stop there. And that is totally 100% okay. That is awesome. And if that's where you are and you want to stay there, you should be proud of yourself. because you have a unique skill and you can command a good life through the form of a salary or freelancing or consulting for that skill. Now, there are ways to expand your toolkit, right? Here are a few examples. You've heard of the 10X programmer. You've heard of the lawyer who bills at $1,500 an hour, right? That's legitimate $1,000 an hour work, again, in the US in this specific example. But when that lawyer stops work, if that lawyer takes a year off, if the programmer takes a year off, that's it. There's no additional, there's investments and so on, but there's no income coming in. So that just shows how it lacks leverage. And that's okay, because most people want to apply their skills at a job and get paid and then live their lives. Like, that is a very, very acceptable and a natural outcome. But some people, and you might be, that's why you're here, are intrigued. Like, is there something beyond this? First, let's talk about expanding. You can always make yourself more valuable, right? And I'm not advocating that you should learn how to code. We call these we call these adjacent skills, where there might be a skill a little bit to the left of what you do that can make you so much more valuable to your organization, right? Maybe you're a blogger, right? And you teach yourself SEO, search engine optimization. Maybe you're a salesperson and you learn how to write better. So you can extend your skills of persuasion using the written word. In my old world, I saw this often. Some of the best investors were former lawyers, because they could understand the nuance of an M&A deal, of a contract, of a bankruptcy restructuring, right? So these are the adjacent skills. Again, they don't have leverage, but they increase your $1,000, again, not the actual dollar amount, the $1,000 bucket, right? And then there's a series of $1,000 skills that transcend industry, right? Public speaking is a great example. I used to be terrified of public speaking, and now I do it, probably 6 hours a week, and I love it. I love every second of it. It's a skill that I learned with coaches and training. Writing, right? Writing is leveraged communication. Think of Jeff Bezos' annual letter. The business world stops, right, when he writes that letter. CNBC starts reporting on the letter. Think about the leverage there. Or even internally, if you have a CEO that writes and gives good, detailed updates, think about the power, the leverage in that. Sales, everything's a sale. Your Tinder profile is a sale. Your LinkedIn bio is a sale. Your Twitter is a sale, right? You are trying to persuade someone that you have ideas worth paying attention to, especially in the land of knowledge work. Technical sensibility. Can you stitch together things using no-code tools and so on, right? You do not need to be an engineer. We have complex tech systems and none of us are engineers. Design. I'm a sucker for design. I love design. I'm very bad at it, but it's enabled us to create a visual identity for rad reads with a limited budget. And then negotiation. Again, this is just a sampling. If you're hearing this and you're like, well, I'm good with 1,000. I'd love to make that 1,000, 1,100, right? It's a good starting place. One of these 6 skills. And these are the skills that make you anti-fragile, right? If there's a round of layoffs happening, the person, the salesperson that's also, a good writer probably will stay. The engineer that's a good public speaker, probably going to stick around. All right. Last, but certainly not least, $10,000 work. Yes, I said it. All right. So what's in this category? Again, it's the intersection of high skill and high leverage, right? It's the way that a CEO can kind of remove themselves from the day-to-day operations of the company. It's the way a great manager can just have their team hum along while they just, act like air traffic control, right? $10K work is available. to everyone. Now, it always, always, always starts with elevating others, whether you are recruiting, training, retaining, and educating, right? Even if you work by yourself, you still have clients, you still have contractors, you still have service providers. It is about elevating others, right? There's an element of genuine care in this, a strong element of genuine care. I'll go even further, of love, right? Looks for one-to-many opportunities, right? So the software engineer sits down and writes code, but what if they make their thought processes clear in a Miro board and then host office hours so that the junior engineers can learn it? Now, the junior engineers won't become the senior engineer overnight, but even if 3 of them absorb 10% of the senior engineer's wisdom and start applying that, boom, the whole thing takes off. And that's available in any job that has other people, right? The power of one-to-many. And this is why 10K work is so hard. You have to be comfortable with delayed gratification and uncertain payoffs. It's the exact opposite of watching the Bitcoin price move around every single second, 7 days, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. You have to be comfortable with doing something, setting a vision and being like, you know what? I'm only going to know if this worked in the next year. Can't do it all the time, but you need to be doing this kind of work. You need to be working on your career, not just in your career. Now, these are some examples, right? These are different ways that you can amplify yourself, right? I'll pick a few, right? For me personally, we have a small team of 7. We spend so much time on culture and process and psychological safety. I know that term gets mixed reaction. I care a lot about the psychological safety of my team. It's all about talent, recruiting, onboarding, culture, socialization, all part of talent, right? Distribution. In the past 2 years, I've sent 3 million emails with a 54% open rate, sitting in this room with a lot of that happened before I had a team. Think about the scale of that. 3 million emails. Big idea, 10K work. People are writing blog. It's not as big of an idea as Second Brain yet. Watch out, Tiago, I'm coming for you. Big idea, deep work, radical candor, Black Swan, right? These are all big ideas, 10,000 hours. Think about the leverage in those. When people start talking about your ideas without you being involved in the conversation, that is leverage. Again, for a certain type of business, my type of business. Brand, right? The Tiffany's blue, the Coca-Cola red, the Home Depot orange, the Slack aubergine purple. A color is identified with a brand, right? Think about those. Think about the leverage on that. The floss dance, right? Memes. Think about that. That time when everyone was, flossing everywhere they went, right? Fortnite. The power of that brand / big idea. So that wraps our talk. I'm excited for the Q&A. We do tons and tons and tons of events like this. They're free. We do an event usually every 2 weeks that covers some element. We dive into some element that we've discussed. We have a template for y'all that will get you signed up for our newsletter. We've got a thriving community of 550 alums, many of whom I suspect are on this call. And so with that, I thank you all for your time. I'm excited for you to try out your 10K work. I thank Julia for hosting, and I am here. I'm going to unshare my screen, and I'm here for the Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kate. This was a brilliant presentation. I think this is stuff that we all, I think, really need to hear. Like, also for me, it's again like a wake up call. Like, think about your 10K work. All right. So everyone, if you have a question, drop it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And you can also upvote each other's questions. I'm just gonna pick a question from here. So Felipe is asking, what is your best strategy to create independent free zones, areas of service where you create a new market by the intersection of different people's elite level skills for serendipity, unique connections with other talentful people? Oh, wow, that's quite a big question.
Wow. What is, okay, well, there's a lot of details in this question, but I'll answer it with like an organizing principle. And the organizing principle that I use, it may not be the one that you use, but this can help you think about because what I hear in that question is, how do you bring all these disparate parts and people and ideas together, right? And this is actually something we do in our business, right? I mean, it's called Rad Reads because I like skateboarding, and I want people to say the word rad often, right? But we like are a professional service company, right? Like we're an education company teaching, managing directors at finance firms how to be more productive. What I'm saying there is that the mantra for me is there's two: follow the fun. And the second one is you never want to compete with someone who genuinely cares. So if I can orient my ship, whether it's in the way I write content, whether it's the way I recruit, whether it's the way that what I choose to read and who I choose to hang out with, what clients we choose to take on in our consulting business, am I able to follow the fun? And will I show up and genuinely care? So that immediately knocks out a lot of activities. So for example, it would make a lot of sense for our business to do Facebook ads. We're good at email. We have a tight funnel. Like, we know how that stuff works. We're not great at it, but we know how it works. I hate Facebook with a passion. I have not logged into my proper Facebook account in over 18 months. And I only have Instagram on my iPad, which means that I have to like look at it like this, because it actually that Instagram doesn't rotate on an iPad. It would be so soul sucking for me to just have to engage with those platforms just so I could sell Facebook ads. And so I choose not to. But what do I do instead? I do this. I do 4 hours of live free events every week. And I hope you can see that it makes me come alive. I hope you can see that I truly care about this. I hope you can see that this is play to me. It's also the crux of our business. Our business is play. And so to answer your question, find your 10K question is, what is the organizing principle of my life that brings everything together? I mean, those are the types of questions that like Socrates and Aristotle asked. But that's how you get started on that journey, right? What is the question? Here's one for you. What is the question that will help me discover what pulls everything in my life together?
What a mic drop.
I was just waiting for the next question.
Amazing. Yeah, I think we can definitely tell that you're enjoying this and your energy completely comes through, and I just love it. Okay.
And just so you know, I just surfed for 2 hours. Like I literally like ran home and like made some paneer and like scarfed it down and then came here. I hadn't even moved my surfboard. The middle one is still wet.
Okay, our next question is coming from Chris, and a lot of other people are also curious about which, let's say, three books, life-changing books, would you recommend?
Oh, life-changing books. The thing about this question is that books have to find you at a certain phase in your life. And so if I was telling you the book, I'm not telling you the phase, and then your phase is different than my phase, or you might not have that phase. So a book that right now is really landing with me, but I'm 42 and a half. I wouldn't have been ready to read this book even 2 years ago, is the Bhagavad Gita. I would not have been ready to read that book for so long. And now I have a spiritual opening to read this book. And so it is so moving. But 40-year-old Khe would not have got it. I would have put it down. If I had thought about other books in different phases of my life, it's along a similar lines. I'm very inspired by Eastern traditions. So another one that's a little bit more accessible is the Tao Te Ching, which is, and I've read the Stephen Mitchell translation. For the Bhagavad Gita, the Erawan I forgot, his name has 2 E's. That is the translation that I highly, the translations really matter there. So those would be like in kind of like 40-year-old Khe. If I go back like in my 30s, I would say there's a book called The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. And that really helped me overcome the scarcity mindset, which is kind of like this belief that like there's never enough. Or like that the other shoe is always going to drop. Like there's always a shoe that's going to drop. So that would be another one. I'd be remiss to not include David Allen's Getting Things Done in this, but actually read it. Like there's a concept called Sundoku or Sudonku, which is when you buy books, it's like flexing on books. So like you have them on your bookshelf. But not reading them. I think even in our community and the Rad Reads community, I think that 96% of the people own GTD and 5% have actually read it. So I recommend that book, but also read it. So that would be another one. And I tried to reread that one each year. I was also very inspired by, there's a Quaker philosopher by the name of Parker Palmer. And he has a book called Let Your Life Sleep. And it has a very kind of, it's like I'm not a religious person, but I'm a deeply spiritual person. And that's kind of come later in my life. But he has a kind of very accessible, kind of like secular friendly way of approaching like quiet and stillness and peace. So I found that book to be very impactful. Give and Take by Adam Grant, which is around just this like genuine care ethos of like, would you help someone even if you knew that you would never get anything in return? And so that's like that really came from that book. In general, though, now I tend to not read. I read very little nonfiction. I mostly read fiction. And when I read nonfiction, I try to not read any nonfiction that's been written in the past 10 years, because I think there's a lot of rehashing of ideas. And I'd rather go back to the older texts that have stood the test of time, other than Tiago's upcoming book. And someone had said GTD is outdated. I agree, but my challenge to you is to identify what parts of it are outdated and what parts of it still work, and then modify the parts that are outdated to suit you. Because I don't think anyone's cracked the code on that yet.
That's a great answer. That the books have to find you at a certain age, definitely.
Oh, also Siddhartha found me now. It's beautiful.
Next question is from Joris, and he's asking, why is not the whole population, maybe of the Western world, doing 10K work right now? What is keeping people from doing it? And are there any good reasons not to do it?
Yes. So if you think of like 10K work, there's an element, a lot of 10K work is kind of making bets on your future self or making bets on your future team, right? And then a lot of $10 work is execution, right? I rag on email a lot. I hate email, but I have to do it. Like that's the engagement issues. So here are a few things. Here are a few reasons why I don't think enough people do 10K work. I think that we are a very solutions-oriented culture, especially in the West. So we're just constantly looking for a solution, but it misses the fact that sometimes we're asking the wrong question. So I think as a society, we're actually not that curious. I'm going to say like Western knowledge working. And again, I recognize that it is, there's a lot of different socioeconomic groups, right? That like this doesn't even apply to. Like a lot of this is aimed to like the archetypical second brain student, which is, you know, an knowledge worker who's like internet savvy. So I think we're solutions oriented. We're actually not encouraged to think big. So if you think about, like, again, I'm going to talk from like an American centric perspective. You know, people are like, oh, like, what is success? Well, success is you go to like a top 10 university and then you get a master's degree, an MBA, and then you go work at Goldman Sachs or McKinsey or Facebook or and so on, right? Very few people question that, right? Because the 10K questions are, they're here. Like, what is the organizing principle of your life? If you're not a religious person, what is it? Money, capitalism, productivity, knowledge? No, knowledge, you're getting closer. That is a hard question to answer. It is a laborious question. It is time consuming. If you've come from worlds of engineering, you know, like outside of the liberal arts, you will struggle. I struggle to answer that question because I'm like, just do more, build more, do more, ship more, right? But there's a question of like, what's this all for, right? So I think that's part of it, is that like we're solutions focused, we're not creative. We're actually strongly influenced by the media and culture that tells us that this is the path or this is not the path, et cetera. And we've lost the ability to independently think. And so 10K work requires like a streak of not contrarian, but just kind of bucking what you're told is the right thing. And then there's the path, like just people struggle with delayed gratification, right? If you ask someone, would you rather have $1 today or $2 tomorrow? Most people are going to say $1 today, even though that's economically, rationally the wrong answer. And then I think that social internet and Uber and DoorDash and Amazon have just like totally warped our conception of gratification. And so we need to unlearn these things. And it's hard and it's time consuming. You lay on the demands of modern life, just the noise. There's just so much noise. It's just so much easier to just like acquiesce.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. 10K work is hard and it requires asking some hard questions. Okay, already approaching the hour. Let's definitely one more question.
Yeah, let's do one more or two. I'm having fun.
Or two.
I'm hyped.
Okay, me too. Camille is asking, is there a difference in applying 10K work to career and personal life?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Camille. I would say there's a much longer kind of philosophical question here. But 10K work is very outcome oriented, right? It's like by definition, right? You're like looking to scale outcomes, right? So if you're looking to scale outcomes, by definition, you're chasing an outcome. But not everything in life has outcomes. And some of the joys of life are outcomeless, right? Whether it's hosting and cooking with friends, whether it is just being subsumed by the beauty of Mother Nature, whether it is throwing on your favorite, new hip hop album, taking an edible and just losing yourself in the moment, right? There are a lot of things that are the act itself, the activity itself is the gift. And so I was thinking when hearing that question, like some of these things are action oriented, and they tend to be, in general, careers tend to be a little bit more action oriented and outcome focused, right? Because there's a bigger purpose for the company. But then you could still think of 10K work in your own personal life. So let's say, you're to your partner, your spouse, your wife. What's the 10K work of being a good spouse? Right? I could tell you what the $10 work is: unloading the dishwasher. Right? It's good. It prevents a fight. It shows respect. But it's not at the crux of your relationship, even though many a couple have argued about the dishwasher. But what is 10K work? Maybe it's like, I had a friend yesterday tell me, me and my husband, we do a quarterly money values planning exercise for 30 minutes. And so they sit together as a couple and they're like, what is important in our lives and how does money get us there? And some of them are super rational, like buying a home, and some of them are, quirkier, like what's on my bucket list? How do we make one step forward our bucket list? That's a 10K activity, right? Think about, so, you could, again, there's an outcome there. The outcome is joy. The outcome is a happy marriage, and so on. But you could think about it that way and kind of like maybe loosen the grip a bit on like, what's the outcome? But still don't think about the magnitude of the outcome, right? Or of the impact. Do one last one if you have my permission.
All right, let's do one more. Failing is asking, is the road to 10K work gradual, or can you be at square one and jump straight into 10K work?
Yeah. So frameworks are frameworks, right? They are a way to organize activity and information. But life is not, we are complex beings. As one of my spiritual teachers, Jerry Colonna, says, we're just bags of chemicals, right? Human beings are just bags of chemicals and emotions and, substance. So it's a very powerful organizing framework, but don't get so caught up on like, is this 10 or 100? And like, you'll start to understand this kind of nuance in it, and you'll start to see that there's this like scope of output and leverage. But again, it's baby step. Oftentimes, 10K work for every single person on this call is thinking more deeply for 15 minutes about a topic that's interesting to you. Right? So it could be like, how could I scale? How could I scale? Like one of my 10K questions is, what does Rad Reads look like without me? Right? It's a simple question. It's a very complex one to answer. And I might just spend 15 minutes thinking about that question. But if I do that regularly, it will have a game-changing effect on my business. Now, let's say you're earlier in your career. Let's say you just graduated college, right? And you're like, well, I don't have, those the income that Khe has and the experience that Khe has and the relationships that Khe has and all of that. Okay. But what's something that can scale? You have a skill, right? You went to college, you graduated with a degree. What's something that you can scale that a little bit? Maybe all it is, maybe here's what it is. You take Tiago's course, and then you get 5 of your colleagues together and you summarize the lessons over lunch. Think about the impact of that, right? It's good stuff in that course. I've taken it. Think about the impact of that, right? And so you don't have to think of 10K work as, hitting home runs all the time, but it is just like, I think of it more just like planting different seeds. And some of them might grow faster and some of them might take longer to grow. And some of them might not grow at all, right? Maybe Rad Reads will always need Khe in it. Maybe. And that question might have been for naught.
Oh wow, I think it's a really good point to end. Thank you so much, Khe. Those were like brilliant insights, really. I think that the chat was already really on fire. So it's a lot of great discussions here, especially about the books you recommended also.
Yeah, no, definitely. Nothing. And again, like I for the people, I just skimmed the chat quickly, and it's like, if this is a conference on productivity, but I challenge you. Productivity is a vessel for a deeper question. Why do you want more time? Why do you want more time? Why do you want to be promoted? Right? If you just think about the ways to get promoted without thinking about why you want to be promoted, you are missing a huge part of the equation. And guess what? You're actually not being productive.
So true.
All right. This is fun. Well, thank you all. I'm super active. I see, I'm not going to be able to go through the chat, but I see like tons and tons of, debates and all that. I'm on Twitter. Let's talk. If you found anything I said confusing, controversial, you want to dig in deeper, I will answer. If you say like, you definitely mention that we were at the summit, and I will definitely answer you. Like, like I said, genuine care is one of my organizing principles.